Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted, and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Today I'm talking with a colleague, Bashir Ghazialam. Is that the, I guess, how do you pronounce it in English, I guess?
You know how to do your homework.
Well, my tongue twists in the way I could pronounce that, but Bashir, I met Bashir briefly at the AILA conference. I think it was San Francisco a couple years back.
I remember, yes.
Since then, I saw his work, and I mean, he's fighting the good fight. He's in court and all that stuff. The stuff I don't have the fire in me to fight every day. He's fighting it, and he's in San Diego, near the border too, helping detain cases, not detain cases. I'm sure MPP kind of stuff. And a couple of weeks or months ago, you won a case in San Diego that challenged the underlying assumptions of MPP or something like that. I remember reading it, you posted it, and it was like one of the first in San Diego. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of groundbreaking. Let's have him on. But as busy as it's been hard to do it. And then coronavirus came and all that. But luckily, we found some time. So Bashir, could you tell us a little bit, just to start, about your background yourself and how you got into immigration?
Sure, yeah. Without taking too much time, I was born in Afghanistan. I came here as a refugee. I just recently saw several posts going where it's a game where you list the number of jobs that you had, except one of them, which is not true. So, but I'm looking at everybody's lists. I'm like, the only thing I haven't done in life is to be a waiter, to waiting tables. Dishwashing, cashier, everything. I mean, everything I see on that list, I've done it. Valet parking, whatever you want to do, you want to say, I've done it. Picking blueberries off the fields in New Jersey, I've done it. Going door to door, selling candy for a nonprofit organization, I've done it. Only in return for a nice McDonald's lunch. But it's just kind of really been a blessing. So I've had the opportunity to get exposed to the legal system in America from a very young age, beginning when we were newcomer refugees, and my sister managed to rear-end another car, and after which several months later we get a knock on the door, and there's a process server serving her with a lawsuit. And then, of course, we had insurance, but we had no clue on how to handle being sued. So that kind of led me to go open the yellow pages and look for lawyers for my sister and all of those things. Oh, there are many reasons why I became a lawyer, but that's one thing that I can think back as to finally a very good lawyer told me, you don't even need a lawyer, just call your insurance company. Give them the complaint and they'll take care of it for you. And that was probably the best advice that we received. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is the career that I may want to be kind of follow and see if I want to get into it. So this is where it's all started, and this is kind of where it is right now. So
I mean, you're in East Coast. I know a lot of Afghani people who came as refugees ended up in like DC and the East Coast area, and then you made the move to West Coast. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so we landed. My dad used to. He had resided in the United States back in the '60s. He went to a military medical school, military medical school in San Antonio for a couple of years, and he's got amazing stories from that time. And and then he came back. A lot of his colleagues stayed, and they ended up having families here, and they became immigrants a long time ago. But my dad chose to go back, and then the war happened, and then we became refugees. And after a couple of months of my dad applying for a refugee. He got obviously accepted, approved, and then they asked my dad, which city do you want to go in America? Oh, he told us, he's like, don't worry. I told him, just send us to any city. I've been all over America. For me, America is all the same. Every city is the same. So just you send us, we accept anywhere. So they ended up sending us to Philadelphia. And then we ended up in North Philly. So we lived in North Philly for about 8 months. During those 8 months, it was just an amazing time. And then there were buses that used to come to the immigrant communities, the newly arrived, fresh off the boat.
How old were you when you came?
I was 13, 14 years old back then. So then they used to pick us on the weekends and then take us to blueberry fields in New Jersey. And we used to go pick blueberries in return for some extra cash. Yeah. So that was kind of my first job in America, but I wasn't very good at it, to be honest with you.
Would you eat all the blueberries? Is that what happened?
So yeah, it was a very tough job.
How did you end up going to immigration? Did you start from that from the beginning when you graduated, or?
No. Okay, so what happened was that I wanted to be like a civil rights lawyer, employment discrimination, stuff like that. And I worked for a very nice law firm, basically a civil litigation mill, which basically my boss had so much confidence in me, or was so reckless, that he sent me to take the deposition of an expert in a medical malpractice case that we were prosecuting. And it was the first day after I was licensed. I had to go do that in Fresno. So now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought I was very bold, but I think I was very reckless too. But at the same time, I mean, it was just it was a very good learning experience. I did well. I did okay. I mean, I got through it and everything. But I got really a lot of experience in terms of litigation in that firm, and I made a lot of friends from that firm, actually, that I'm still friends with. And so then I went out on my own a couple of years later, and I started doing civil litigation, set up my office. I started looking at the phone; it wasn't ringing, and then I did some advertising. The advertising ended up in getting a lot of calls, but all the calls, 99% of the calls had to do with immigration. So I'm like, no, sorry, I don't do immigration. Let me refer you to somebody. He's like, no, I already have a lawyer. I just want you to handle this case, please. I know you can do it, blah, 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 blah. And then I started taking those cases. So then I started doing immigration. And obviously back then, the deportation machine was going very efficiently, working under Bush. And
it's interesting how so many people in immigration kind of fall into immigration. They weren't expecting it. That's a typical kind of thing for immigration lawyers. They weren't expecting to do it, but it just happened that way.
Exactly. Yes. So because I had been to immigration court, I was an interpreter before I became a lawyer. I was a Pashto interpreter, actually.
Oh, okay.
In San Diego. And I was very busy when I was going to college. I was making very good money doing that, actually. And as a matter of fact, when I went in front of Judge O'Connor for the first time, it was the first time, of course, he yelled at me and berated me for being 2 hours late to the hearing, of course, rightfully, but I had a good excuse. But then I said, yeah, of course. You worked at the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, and you work with Miko. He's like, how do you know all this stuff? I said, I used to come to the office all the time. I was an interpreter. You guys used to call me. He's like, really? I don't remember that. I said, yeah, I remember that, but I remember him. I never really talked to him because he was the big boss back then.
Yeah.
But I do remember him working there. But basically, I was an interpreter. I did interpreting in depositions, in the doctor's appointments, immigration court. I went to immigration court, and obviously, I had never been to immigration court because I came as a refugee, and I didn't have to fight for my status here in the United States, of course. But I'd been to the immigration court, with friends and to help friends out, and I was like, I just did not like going there for some reason, I still do not like going there for some reason. On the other hand, when I go to federal courts and civil, it's just a different feeling, and it's
100%. It's a different world. Yeah.
Exactly. So then I started doing immigration, and boom, I ended up in front of a couple of really cool judges, like Judge DePaulo, who granted my first case. It was a really tough case. I had to fight to get him out of the aggravated felony classification to make him eligible for cancellation of removal. So then we went in there, and I got him. I got him, and then that led to a few other cases.
How'd you first figure out the rules of cancellation removal and all this kind of stuff? Weren't there any resources back then?
Without again, I go back to mentorship. If you're not an aggressive lawyer in terms of being persistent, and not being afraid to pick up the phone and find a lawyer somewhere, and you meet him in court, grab his card, you're like, oh, that's the lawyer that knows what he's talking about. Grab his card, bug the heck out of him or her, and that's it. And they're gonna call you back, and they're gonna give you the answers, and buy a course bands. Back then, I got introduced to course bands a few years later, but obviously, it's just there. I mean, the law is very complicated. Immigration law is a very complicated area of law, and you have to have a lot of luck. Luckily, I didn't. At some point you have to get into immigration law, and that's and I felt like I wasn't dabbling into it, but it's like when you first do it, it's like you only have a few cases and you don't know where it's going to end up. So you're kind of you just kind of hope that you don't do the wrong thing, which is going to lead to a lot of all kinds of consequences for the client and everything. But it's just about being diligent. I called Bill Waddell, for example. I haven't seen him in a long time. Somebody referred me to him. I was very desperate. I needed to go to court. I need to do the pleadings, blah, blah, blah. And Bill answered my call, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. Inadmissibility, deportability, you have to, what's the NTA? I'm like, I don't know. Hold on a second. Let me look at it. It's like, blah, 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 step by step. There are going to be lawyers that's going to take the step by step through everything. And he took me and he just kind of, all you need is just kind of the somebody to tell you, kind of lead you towards the right direction. And then you just have to pick up the books and just hit the books and start reading and start learning this stuff, and then after that, it becomes a little easy that if you have the right foundations and all of that. And then there were other, lawyers just here in San Diego. It's just amazing. Just San Diego. It's a small community, and but there are a lot of lawyers that I can name right now that have always been out, have always been there to answer my call. Kathy.
In San Diego is a little harder. I heard the courts there are a little more strict than LA. They're more by the book and stuff. That's what I've heard. If you're doing removal over there.
Yeah, exactly. Then later on, I had the pleasure of expanding my practice into LA, and I have a lot of cases in LA, as a matter of fact. thanks again to colleagues. I haven't had to go there for a long time for covering. Yeah, LA is completely different. I like the LA style, actually. You know, I mean, there's just it's much better. And in San Diego, it's kind of, you know, okay, wow, they take themselves a little bit more seriously than they are. You know, I mean, it's just immigration court, for God's sakes. You know, it's an agency.
Yeah, I remember back when I did removal of the first day I went there, every time I wanted to talk, I would get up, and the judge kept saying, "Sit down. You don't have to get up here." And I kept getting up because I don't know what to do. So, what kind of practice do you have? What areas of immigration do you focus on?
Okay, so let me tell you what I don't do, which is
Yeah.
exactly what I do. What I tell my clients I don't touch. Yeah, I don't do most of the employment law related areas. I have done a lot of EB-5s in association with other lawyers. Of course, I have the pleasure of you know, have a big clientele base who some of them have a lot of money. So I've been able to help immigrate a lot of the people through the EB-5 program. I don't do just a lot of areas. So basically, family law adjustments, family immigration. Those are the types I do, because obviously a lot of the clientele bases that I have, that they have the family, they have fiancé visas and all of those things. Humanitarian types of asylum, such as of immigration, asylum, U visas, T visa. I'm starting to pick up a few of those. I was naive enough to go for an S visa once a few years ago, which didn't really. That was very naive. But anyways, nowadays I do a lot of the MPP cases. I do a lot of. I had to get into federal litigation, because once you start doing everything, and once you take the mentality or adopt the mentality that, you know what, I'm not gonna take no for an answer, and I'm just gonna keep fighting, you know. And that if the regulations say there's no appeal to something, it doesn't really necessarily mean that. Yeah. You know. So it's like, don't read something and stop there, even though if it's definitive. So nowadays. Obviously, when you go to immigration court, you start rubbing shoulders with a lot of other really good lawyers, and that has really paid off. I mean, I would say 100% of my cases are now from word of mouth and from referrals from other colleagues. And I've completely stopped marketing, completely. I mean, totally. And for a few years, I did a show, TV show also, for which got broadcasted globally to the Afghan community on the Afghan television. And I was able to answer a lot of questions through that show. That was back when I had a little bit extra time on my hands and I didn't have 3 kids.
I had a couple of questions about all that. So one is, I mean, you deal with Afghani cases still. How are things with the embassy? I get calls from people in Afghanistan who go into administrative processing, or their K-1s get sent back to USCIS. Is that a typical thing you see for Afghanistan?
I just filed a lawsuit against the embassy, which was not my first lawsuit, yesterday. And that was for a client who has, excuse me. I mean, it's amazing, you know, it's just amazing. It's just this amazing new client of mine, Afghan guy, hero. I mean, literally willing to take bullets for American citizens, you know? So he ended up here, and he's been here for several years. He came here on a special immigrant visa. He got married. He's been trying to bring his wife since 2016.
Wow.
Since the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he started the case. Of course, it's his fault because he started doing everything on his own and didn't call me in the
Yeah.
first day one. But that's okay because that's how life is. But so I looked at the case. I said, listen, send me everything, man. I said, did you call the senator? He's like, of course I called the senator. Which senator? Senator Schumer. And he sent me a letter and said, you cannot do anything. I said, that's right, because I have more power than Schumer and I get it done for you. So that's the kind of privilege we have, you know? So he had done all the right things in his case. And I said, let me take the case and I'm going to get it resolved for you, my friend. There's no guarantees. Of course, lawyers are not allowed to give guarantees. And I do all those disclosures. But I feel confident enough that this case, there's no reason for this case to be delayed this far. And the Washington, D.C. judge is going to agree with me, and we're going to get his wife over here, as we have done in the past. So, yeah. So embassy, so I think the embassy has been canceling all recent interviews. But it's a good embassy. I mean, Kabul, I'm very good. I have a very good rapport with the Kabul embassy. I have tons of cases there. Pakistan embassy, I have a kind of up and down relationship with them. I don't know if they're kind of like, it's like, what kind of mood are they in today?
They have I think they have like everyone who comes in, there's an expectation of fraud. I think they just, and I've talked to officers, the ex-officers from there. They expect everyone to have fraudulent documents for the most part. But with Afghanistan, it's just, I think the computer just tells them admin processing, wait. Because like, I just see so many like perfect cases. There's like no reason for these cases to have any hangups. But I mean, it's Afghanistan, there's the war, there's a lot of things involved, but these are people that are secular, even have nothing to do with any of that.
No, it's all because they're from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it could be from another country too. It's not exclusive because they're from Afghanistan.
And Iran and Afghanistan, but now it's everywhere. I mean, China's hit hard. India, you get crazy. And so it's kind of constant everywhere now. Even like it's going to trickling into European cases as well. How do you deal with the demands? Because when you go to removal and you're doing federal court cases, how do you have time to even like do stuff? Do you have other associates that help you, or how do you have time to show up to court and do work?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have basically colleagues that I do, they work, we work together, and I assign everybody cases and they do it for me, I do a lot of the writing myself. I do my own work, but there's a lot of work that I can delegate all the time. For example, I need a country conditions, just Brian Manning, you had him on your show, right? Yeah. So it's just a big network, of lawyers. Recently I got to learn about him, and I just recently assigned a NOID response to him, and it's very quick turnaround time, man. It's just he helped me out with that. So
immigration is such a team effort that immigration lawyers really have to work together for the information, for support. And it's so great we can use national support because we're federal practice, so we could work out of everywhere. And so it's like, if you're listening to this, if you're new, you have to, go to AILA, get friends, because it's really, as you said in the beginning, it takes a village. It's a village of immigration lawyers helping each other. And, if there's paralegals, there's all these other people in the system. You can't do it alone.
Absolutely. Speaking of AILA, I've been an AILA member since 2007, okay? And it's like the preeminent organization. I mean, that exclusive organization for lawyers. And obviously, in the beginning, I kind of had a mixed feeling. I'm like, there's got to be other organizations. I mean, don't you can't you have a choice? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's not really like that. AILA, you have to be a member of AILA. You cannot be an immigration lawyer if you're not a member of AILA. Obviously, after a long time, when you're busy, you're like, I'm not even going to these conferences. I'm not, why am I paying this money? But it's very well worth it. Recently, I never really I've never really had any reason to continue my membership for a while. I mean, until now, I think. But yeah, you got to continue your membership. It's just I mean, the resources,
Sure.
the team, I mean, the advocacy. Once you go to the annual conferences, the motivation that you get. Yeah, so he gave a really excellent speech. He's a Cuban immigrant, I think. He was a head of a USCIS, if I'm not mistaken. One of those.
Leon Rodriguez or Leon something?
Mayorkas.
Mayorkas. Okay.
Yeah. He just, I mean, it's just, you know, it just kind of humanized everything for me, you know, that how much this guy, what his position means to him, you know, how much it really, I mean, the gravity of his role. I mean, he really expressed it, you know, that he was dedicated to fulfilling his role as a the director of an agency, you know, not as a politician or anything like that. So I think still, you know, I deal with a lot of my counterparts. For example, the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're just an excellent group of people, very good professionals, you know. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves, you know, that it's just it's at the end of the day, we're all in the same bar, you know, whether you're on this side of the bar or that side of the bar, and all of those. And a lot of times, you know, I see a lot of nowadays. I see some of the TAs, for example, from back in the day, and they're like, and then, you know, because I don't really see that. I see them once in a while, blah blah blah, and everything really. I mean, at the same time, you know, a lot of times you really want to kind of take a very adversarial position, a very kind of because a lot of them are a lot of times very busy, and they kind of blow you off, and they don't really, they're not, you know, they don't engage in really kind of collegial kind of things. But at the same time, it's always an on working relationship that you have to have. It's a very small community, you know.
Yeah.
So you always, yeah. So in any event, it's just coronavirus is just amazing. It's very big. It's just it's just it's still, I'm just trying to grasp. I mean, all the just the consequences of everything. So we're in the middle of all of this. But anyways, so.
So tell me more. Tell me about that one case where you had the judge throughout the government's case. That was MPP or something like that, where they said you had posted the case where they found the government was that the law was incorrect the way they did. Do you know which case I'm talking about?
Yeah. So basically, it was a termination of proceedings, removal proceedings case, where I mean, I had a very the MPP cases have been going on since the beginning of 2019, and since its initiation, I was like, it wasn't really, that was not really the area that I was really getting a lot of clients in. But at the same time, all of a sudden it got more and more, and then they started shutting down all the other cases, and all the calls that I was getting was MPP related. And they're like, oh, I'm like, where are you? And they're like, in Mexico. I'm like, let me look at this MPP thing one more time. It's like, is it really possible that they could send people back to Mexico? Asylum seekers? And then it was like all becoming a reality. Then I was learning more and more about it. And then as well, I was learning more and more about it, I was getting more and more calls from potential MPP clients. So then I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm very equipped to go take these cases. So I started obviously for volunteering for after a lotto, and took a few pro bono cases first. And then they shut down the courts for everybody else. It was all MPP, so there was not really any other choice other than just sit on the sidelines and just watch everything go down like this, you know.
Yeah.
So then I started taking MPP cases, and to be honest with you, in the beginning, I didn't know how to plead. I didn't know how to handle the whole amendment of charges, I-261. Blah blah blah, and all of that. And then I went in front of O'Connor, and O'Connor had just been transferred from Los Angeles, so I hadn't really had any opportunity to be in front of him. So the first case I had in front of him was on an MPP case. And then he's like, counsel, are you sure you want to plead? I said, I talked to my client, Your Honor. Yeah, he wants to proceed, and we want to plead, and we're going to admit. He's like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, no, I'm not sure. I don't want to do that. And then I don't think I was ready to plead. I think I had a strategy, a better strategy. I mean, trust me, I don't just plead for no reason, you know. So, so then we just, I think I came to a conclusion to deny all the charges and concede removability, all the factual allegations, and concede the charge of removability. And he's like, well, then I'm going to terminate. And I'm like, I heard that you've been terminating, but that's not what I want. He's like, you don't want termination? I'm like, no, I don't want termination, Your Honor, right now, because if you terminate, my clients who have already been attacked in Mexico, they're going to be sent back, and blah, blah, blah. And then, so basically, I had to adopt and the government's position and basically argue on behalf of the government. To make a long story short, I bought myself some time. So he gave me some time to go figure it out, you know? So then he reset it for another week. Of course, I go into just strategy mode. And I'm like, how am I gonna get this case terminated and at the same time keep my clients here? And then I'm like, it's all about then talking to colleagues, Amy Maldonado, everybody else, and the group, the whole colleagues. So again, without the colleagues, I mean, the advisory, the MPP advisory that Taylor has spent tons of hours working on, and the Q&As, read it, and they gave me kind of the roadmap on how to get the damn case terminated and keep my clients here. So then I went into federal court with the TRO and blah, blah, blah. And then the following week is just spending just sleepless nights, the whole week working back and forth, preparing everything, going in and arguing for termination, at the same time having the federal writ of habeas corpus ready to be filed, so that way they don't take my client back. I get the case terminated. At the same day, I get the case filed. I got the emergency TRO granted. Then my clients ended up staying here, and then it's a back and forth war between me and us and them. And we go make the arguments and all of those. In the meantime, obviously, the Mexican government, the officials, the embassy and all of them, they reach out to me and they want to coordinate and they want to blah, blah, blah. So then it turned into several cases, and we were able to terminate dozens of cases after that, where we ended up completely getting our clients out of the MPP program and successfully keeping them in the United States, putting the government in a position where they had to decide whether to send them to family detention centers or to parole them straight out. And all of them, the overwhelming majority of them, they decided to parole them out. So then some of them got new entities issued, and the majority of them, the government appeals, and so right now we're fighting the appeals in the BIA. We had several Board of Immigration appeals decisions that deal with the MPP cases. However, none of them are go to the actual issues that are involved in the MPP. The overwhelming majority of the asylum seekers that they're sending back to Mexico, or they're sending them back in violation and contrary to the MPP policy itself, not just regulations, INA, and all of those things, but strictly, specifically in contravention of the regulations that they came up with. I mean, the guidances and the advisories of the MPP. It's in complete contradiction to that. And 100% of the MPP cases, as the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has decided already, that more likely than not, all MPP cases are illegal. Why are they illegal? They are illegal because they are exclusively the treatment of people, asylum seekers, people who come to the US borders, who present themselves at the ports of entry, and or who jump the fence, cross the border, or enter illegally through the ocean or through the rivers and whatever, and then they are apprehended and then they're sent back. The regulations, the act, the INA, section 235B1, exclusively it provides for the treatment of those people. MPP is only authorized the return. The question in these cases is whether you can return asylum seekers to Mexico once they have applied for asylum. The answer to that is unequivocally no. You cannot do that because 235B2 authorizes that return of a specific class of people. I mean, there's no ambiguity in this in this act. So basically, a B1 says, okay, this is how we're going to treat these people. We're going to take them and we're going to order them expeditiously removed. And the people who do not have documentation and the people who have fraudulent documentation, and the people, those are the people that are arriving aliens that are seeking admission at the port of entry. In addition to that, we're going to lump in another class of people, which are not aliens, but who they're applicants for admission, but they're still entrants without inspection, who have been found within this area of the United States within a certain amount of time. So these are the three sets of people that we're going to pack together, and we're going to put them all in B1 category, okay? And if they express a fear of return to their countries of origin or nationality, then we're going to screen them for asylum. So that's the treatment under B1. What does B2 say? Okay, under B2, they say that every other person that is not the three groups of people that I just described to you, that if they're not those three groups of people, even if, for example, they have a visa, for example, in their hand, they're in Tijuana, they have a passport from India, let's say India, and they have a visa on their India passport, okay? And they say, okay, I'm coming to the United States. Where are you coming from? For? I have a fear of going back to India. Okay, then you're not subject, then you're subject to inadmissibility because you have a B1, B2 visa here, but you're coming in for permanent purposes. So we're going to deny you this entry, my Indian applicant. So therefore, you are subject to what? You are subject to inadmissibility because let's say that they're also suspected to be ineligible for admission because they have a report that this guy is a member of a terrorist organization in India, okay? Now, at that point, B2 addresses that situation, because B2 says, okay, now you can send this guy back to Mexico to wait you cannot deny this guy asylum.
Mm-hmm.
You have to still give him a right to apply for asylum, but you can treat him under B2 because he doesn't fit under B1, because B1 we specifically said that it's because the ground of inadmissibility is because he doesn't have documentation, or he has fraudulent documentation. None of those are true so far.
Yeah.
And he's not entered without inspection. That's it, B1. So that guy is suspected. The CBP officer tells him that we suspect that you're coming into the United States to engage in terrorist activities. That's a separate ground of inadmissibility. But the guy says, no, I'm not. But, let me go in front of an immigration judge. I'm going to prove that I'm not a terrorist, or I'm not coming to engage for terrorist activities. So therefore, let me go in front of an immigration judge because I have a fear of persecution back to go to India.
Yeah.
Okay? So then the officer can treat him under B2 because they're separate. See, that's very simple. This is what it's all about. Okay? The B2 specifically addresses everybody else. For example, health reasons. For health reasons, you have tuberculosis, my friend. You cannot come in here.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, but let me request asylum. Okay, you can request asylum, but we have to send you back to Mexico, because under this program, we can send you back to Mexico because you don't belong in B1, you belong in B2 for public charge purposes. This is exactly the analysis that the Ninth Circuit made in that recent case, Innovation Law Lab, that deals with this particular issue. So that the Innovation Law Lab says that, no, none of the asylum seekers that you have in front of you in immigration court, none of them fall under B2. So therefore, you cannot send them under B2C. Only because at B2C, you can only send people back to Mexico if they belong in the B1, B2 category.
Yeah.
So long story short, I don't know whether I was able to explain it, but it was just, I didn't prepare for getting.
Well, thanks for letting us know. So this is the big issue right now with the coronavirus. They're stuck outside anyways. They've kind of locked down the borders. So it's like, unexpected. This 2020 was a crazy year. Every month it's something new. First we almost went to war with Iran, and still maybe going to war. Who knows? Then coronavirus kicks in. I don't know what's going to happen next month, but for now, luckily we have these communications still where we can keep in touch, and they're still accepting applications. We can keep working. The level of unemployment is kind of scary. Reports came out today that, I don't know, some crazy number of people are unemployed. That's going to trickle out through the economy, and hopefully coronavirus disappears and people get back to work so they can feed their families and stuff. But there's just so many things going on. And the whole MPP thing is a very scary situation because, as you know, the people there have no health benefits. There's no way they can access health care. So that creates a very dangerous, situation just for everybody, So this prejudice that exists is causing other kind of factors that come into play. But all we do is pray and work together. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, that the MPP case is an ultimate test to the Supreme Court. It is the ultimate test. Law cannot be written so black and white.
Yeah.
In order for the Supreme Court to justify adopting a dissenting position from that of a very reasoned Ninth Circuit Court. So it's just amazing. It's just very mind-boggling because it's just it's really terrible because the government put itself in this position, and it's like there's no other argument. There's only, it all boils down to that argument that whether that interpretation of that law of that section. It's and then also again, I'm sorry to delve into this too deep, but again, even if MPP was legal, we have to keep in mind, even if MPP was legal, even if, let's say that 235 B2 applies for MPP people, it specifically does not apply to entrance without inspection. That over 90% of the people that are put in MPP are people who are EWIs.
Mm-hmm.
And MPP, again, Section 235B2, the amazing thing about it is that B2C goes a step further. And the text of B2C only applies, it only allows the return of arriving aliens.
Mm-hmm.
How could you define or justify redefining the definition of what an entrant without inspection is? How do you do that? I mean, the first thing you learn when you start practicing immigration law, that you learn what EWI stands for, and how do you do that? Unfortunately, this is another irony of everything, John, is that the Ninth Circuit case, Innovation Law Lab, doesn't even address that. It just addresses it makes a distinction between 235B1 and B2, that the entire MPP is illegal, that the entire MPP is illegal. Everybody that is sent back is illegal. But what the issue that remains is whether the entrants without inspection are authorized to be sent back under 235B2C, and that's where Judge O'Connor comes in. Mm-hmm. That's where Judge O'Connor that's why he only terminates MPP cases where initially the respondent had entered without inspection, and then they were later on reclassified as arriving aliens. And this is, again, the government does not dispute that entrants without inspection are entrants without inspection. They do not dispute that. But they make the leap of arguing that, oh, yeah, they weren't then, but they are now, mm-hmm. because guess what? They came to the port of entry and presented themselves for admission, so therefore they became arriving aliens, because they were only transported to the court for the purposes of their hearing this morning.
So they forced them back to go in that position to become arriving. It is, yeah.
So that basically they're saying that, you know, we are able to break the law to make them become what they are now. So to make this is their argument. It's just amazing. And then the TAs have to sit there and scratch their head and make an actual argument about that. You know, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's move on to other topics that you may not have covered.
Well, that was the main one I want to talk about. I'm glad you specify what's going on with it. You know, I myself have to head out for a second, but if people wanted to contact you and ask this stuff and get information, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, just don't hesitate. You know, call me at my cell phone, 619-795-3370. You can write it out on there, 619-795-3370. Or they can, if they're friends with me on Facebook, they can send me a message.
Yeah.
And if you're not friends with me on Facebook, unfortunately, this happened several times where I don't go and check this very hidden folder somewhere on my messages where I have thousands of message requests, and I can't keep up with that. So I only am able to see the ones that are friends. And so just the safest way is to either text me or to email me. My email is bg@lobg.net. My initials at the initials of law office of Bashir Ghazialam.net. So that's my contact information. Yeah.
I guess one last question. I guess with the coronavirus, how are you managing your office right now? We talked earlier. You said you're going in just for some purposes and doing the rest of the work at home.
Yeah, so I know that I'm taking a risk here still, where I go. So I don't touch anything. I just go. I don't even change. I just go as I get up, and I obviously I'm in my out of my pajamas, and I just take take my shower. I try to take as many showers as possible, and then I go as soon as I come back. I take my clothes off in the garage and dump it, and then I go take another shower. And because basically, even if I go to my office, I just go, just have
Yeah.
something with me, and I don't touch anything. I just go in and boom out. It's great because I don't interact with anybody.
How are you dealing with the EOIR and their everyday changing it? So you have detained cases. So are you still going for those to
Oh
EOIR?
yeah, detained cases. Now there's no better time than now to request find a way to file bond motions, because that's what it's all about now. Yeah, I have unfortunately several clients that are subject to mandatory detention. No matter what you do. I have a few clients that are arriving aliens, and again, it's so frustrating when you have to basically educate the immigration judges about the eligibility, jurisdiction, and just basic simple things. Some
Well,
immigration judges.
if you're getting judges who've never practiced immigration law becoming immigration judges, and that's immigration is so complicated. It's not you got to have people that have been practicing for a long time. We have JAG officers that former military, God bless them, are coming, but it's not something you just learn on the fly. This is really complicated.
Yeah, if you ask me to become an immigration judge now, despite all this experience that I've gained particularly in the several years, no way. I'm not qualified yet. It's just amazing. I mean, uh,
It's a hard job.
yeah, it's a very hard job. I mean, how it's terrible, because
All the
especially
pressure.
for the underrepresented,
Yeah.
and it's terrible. But I sometimes just go sit and watch hearings with proces, and it's just I can't stay there for a long time. It's just.
I guess on that note, Bashir, thank you so much for coming on. People, could find you online and email and phone. You're a great resource, and thank you for the creative work that you're doing. It's very interesting. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. My
Bye-bye.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, John.
Stay
Okay.
safe. Talk soon.
Take care. Bye.